Hi everyone, we are going to do a continuation of lesson 91. We talked about transitive and intransitive verbs, and we are continuing that with these very difficult words. And we have 3 sets of very difficult words that we're going to continue in. So now remember, transitive verbs have direct objects. Intransitive verbs do not have direct objects. So, for instance, if I say, I kick the ball, we have the ball is the direct object, right? Kick, it's transferring the action into the ball, and the ball is receiving the action. So that's how you find your direct objects. And that's what you call, if anything with a direct object, you call that verb a transitive verb. Anything without a direct object, you're calling it an intransitive verb. Now, the things that we use for intransitive verbs are things like prepositional phrases that act as adverbs, clausals, adverbial clauses. That's the same as a clausal, and we use adverbs. And that's what we use for intransitive verbs. So now, with that in mind, remembering that, now we look at the verb raise. Now, raise means an increase, to lift up. And there's lots of other definitions, but this is a very simple definition to help you understand this very confusing word. Now, raise needs help. If you can remember that raise needs help, it'll help you so much to say, which one do I use? Do I use raise or do I use rise? And so just think, raise needs help. And you have to use your direct objects, which makes it a transitive verb. Raise is always a transitive verb. That means it has to have a direct object. Rise right here. The definition, upward, increase. Well, look at that. Upward, to lift up, to increase, to increase. Is that confusing? Well, it is confusing. That's why people get these so mixed up. But even though these have these definitions, they're doing something different. They mean something different for this verb. So now rise doesn't need help. So think about that. It does not have a direct object. So that makes this an intransitive verb. So that will help you. Raise takes direct objects. Rise does not take direct objects. Raise is a transitive verb. Rise is an intransitive verb. So if I look at this example, so the example of raise, I raise children in my home. Now for that to work, you have to have your subject plus your verb plus your direct object, which makes this a transitive verb right here. You have your subject, your verb, and your direct object right here. Now look at the word rise. It does not take a direct object. That means it's an intransitive verb. So look, if we put it in here, I rise children in my home. Does that sound goofy? It does sound goofy. But some people that are just learning how to understand this, you can't hear it sometimes. Sometimes you can hear it and sometimes you can't. And this is one that I feel you can hear, but there's oftentimes you can't. Is it raise or is it rise? Well, this has a direct object, so you know this has to be raise. We can't rise children. It's wrong. If you put rise with a direct object, you know you've done it wrong. Okay? So remember, rise doesn't need help, but raise needs help to understand it. So you need that direct object to help you understand. But rise, you do not. I will rise. So does that make sense? But then you use a prepositional phrase. It's going to act as an adverb phrase in the morning. And that will help you understand even more. Or you can just use an adverb. Or you can use an adverbial clause to help describe the word rise. But it's not going to come with a direct object. Now, raise or rise, they're different usages. They're different implications, different definitions. Even though those are very similar, they are different definitions. And when you actually go in, you're going to see piles and piles of different definitions, and it can be really confusing. So I just simplified it to make sure that, yeah, look, raise, it is an increase. And you are lifted up. The children are being raised, right? Rise is upward. The sun will rise, right? And it's an increase. Look right here, rise. I rise in happiness when I raise flowers. Now, rise, this rise, it's not taking a direct object, right? But look at this one. If this is your prepositional phrase that's describing your verb right here. So this is the proper way to use that. Now here we have a dependent clause, and I raise flowers. So see how flowers can't just raise on their own. Okay, so this is a picture of me raising flowers, because see, these flowers cannot do it on their own. I put the soil in, I sifted through rock, and I put fertilizer in, I planted them, I cut them back. I am the one that's doing the work for this, and then they turn out really beautiful. So you raise them. See, look, it has a direct object. You're raising the flowers. If we're going to do our diagram right here, and you say I, and then you have rise. But in here, see how this, in happiness. Now right here, I raise flowers. I raise, and then look, flowers. See how this is all sitting on one line, and this has modifying words. So this is what transitive verbs do, and this is what intransitive verbs do. So the example above, intransitive is rise. It doesn't take a direct object, and transitive is raise, and it does take a direct object. So that's how you know how to use those verbs. The intransitive verb rise will not use what? Direct objects. The transitive verb raise will use direct objects. This adjustment raises a lot of concerns. How do we know that raises is correct? Why can't I say this adjustment rises a lot of concerns? It almost sounds like it could be either or, but how do I know that raises is correct? There is a direct object. Here's your direct object. They're talking about lot. This is your direct object. And then right here of concerns is describing lot. So you're raising a lot. So this, we know that this is correct because we have a direct object. Daniel and Paul raise their hands when they have questions. How do we know that we are using the correct raise right here, or rise?
Because
there's a direct object right here. So see how we can say this. Daniel and Paul raise their hands when they have questions. That sounds goofy. You can hear that one. You can't hear it in this one very much. Paul was given a raise because he worked so hard. Now, raise in this one, what is this raise?
That's a noun.
That's a noun. Nice job, Daniel. Right here it tells us, boom, you're a noun. This A, because it's an article, it's telling us that that's a noun. So you need to remember that have nouns. Now, in this sense, when you are receiving money, see raise, your money is increasing. So you need to know what a raise is. It will never be the increase of money, as in your job, will never be rise. Choose the correct word, you guys. Make sure you follow through with that and choose the correct word. Now we're going to talk about the really difficult word rise. I want the temperature to rise in our home by 10 degrees. How do you know that this is correct?
Oh, because there is no direct object.
There is not a direct object. Now this is attached to an infinitive. I want the temperature to rise. Now remember, infinitives are confusing because they look like they're prepositional phrases, but here we have a verb. And so this is describing what?
Temperature.
Yeah, it's describing temperature. So now, but it doesn't have a direct object. It has these prepositional phrases following it. It doesn't have a direct object sitting in here. So you know that you're using this correctly. I want the temperature to raise in our home by 10 degrees. That does sound a little bit goofy. The sun rises 8 a.m. for the next 2 weeks, which is true at our place. I can't wait till it starts coming up sooner. So the sun raises at 8 a.m. for the next 2 weeks. It does sound goofy for that one. But look, how do we know? How are we absolutely certain that this is correct?
Because there is no direct object.
This is not a direct object following it. Look, prepositional phrase right here, boom. There's not a direct object. This is describing rises. It rises. When does it rise? At 8 a.m. When is it going to rise? For the next 2 weeks. Both of those prepositional phrases describe this rise. These are adverb phrases. Adverb phrases. You can't use raise there because you don't have a direct object. Okay, now the word rise, assume an upright position from being down. So that's also helping you understand. You're going to rise up. To rise can be used with a direct object. So this can be tricky. Sometimes you can use this with a direct object, to rise. Look, it's an infinitive. It's not a standard thing to do. I would just try not to do it until you become good at writing and you're totally understanding how to use raise and rise in your sentences, because this is one of the most difficult words that we get tripped up on. All right, everybody, we'll see you in the next lesson. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Bye.